And welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals. My name's Trip Mitchell, and I'm joined by newsman emeritus Randall Carlisle.
I've never heard it referred to like that, but that's...
You are the father of all newsmen in this market.
Yeah, not literally.
Well, fortunately...
I did lead a wild life, but
not the case.
Yeah.
And Randall, now you're working at Odyssey House, and you've told me it is the most fulfilling job you've ever had.
It's so different than working in the media. I think the media is basically a selfish-oriented industry because you're trying to make lots of money, and if you're an anchor person or a reporter or whatever, you're trying to climb up the ladder, and so you're focusing on yourself. And even though we were imparting a lot of knowledge and hopefully informing people. And you mentioned on another podcast, entertaining people, which is more of what we're doing, what they're doing now. I just feel like what I'm doing now is more of a, I wouldn't say, I mean, I get a lot of satisfaction knowing that Odyssey House is helping a lot of people, and that makes me feel good. And I didn't feel that way in television.
And it's funny because you get into a rat race, and we'll get a chance to talk about the rat race.
We just have her here to look nice in the middle, see, just the lovely lady. To
nice and young, but we won't get into that. But when you're in a business that's a dog-eat-dog world, it's not collaborative because you're always thinking of how, in TV, I know, you look at other people in TV and you look at where they are compared to you. Are they higher in the food chain?
Sure.
Are they lower?
And every reporter wants to be an anchor, and everybody ostensibly acts like they're getting along. It's like, "Hi, Trip, how are you?" Stabbing you in the back, you know.
Well, just not to get too inside, I had a chance to work for probably the worst person in television. That was Robin Leach, and he was very famous for
Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
And we've just aged ourselves here. And Robin said to me one time, he goes, "Trip, you know I hate you." And I go, "Robin, you've made that abundantly clear." He bought a station I was running down in Vegas. And he was part of another ownership group, and he didn't like me. And he said, "You are so lucky because you know I hate you. If we were in Hollywood or in a bigger operation, you would think I was your best friend, and I'd be stabbing you in the back." He goes, "Trip, I stab you in the front." And I learned a valuable lesson at that point because people will tell you what you want to hear. And this happens in all walks of life. Sure. And to circle around to Odyssey House, part of what Odyssey House does is not tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear and what's the truth.
And what I like about my job is that I don't think boy, I'm getting choked up here. Thank you. Is the fact that I don't think there's another person at Odyssey who wants my job, and I don't want somebody else's job. In TV, everybody wants somebody else's job.
If that is so true, and I remember very specifically, you'd find out that someone's working with you on a crew has been telling the boss everything bad you do,
right?
Just to try to get your
good job.
Yeah, to try to get your.
Let's get to this lovely lady here.
Please do, and that is a beautiful blue on you.
Thank you.
It's Odyssey blue. See that?
That's right.
See that?
Okay.
Sabrina Malan. She works in the marketing office. She works in an office with me, and she is in recovery herself.
I am.
And tell us what you do at Odyssey.
So I'm the outreach specialist in the marketing department. That's my full-time job, and then I also have a part-time job at Odyssey. So I'm the assistant to the director for sober living.
Okay. Well, let's talk about both your circumstances in just a second.
Sure.
But tell us about your story. How did you get into addiction, and how did you get out of it?
So when I was 21, well, let me back up a little bit. When I was 17...
This was 4 years ago.
No. I'm almost 38 now.
Oh my God.
What a charmer, Trip.
So when I was 17, I started working in a very adult industry. And
TV news?
Yeah, I wish.
With fewer
Not
clothes.
Quite.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So I was engaged at the time, and he had cheated on me, and between that and dancing, it took me down a really dark path, and I wanted to do anything I could to not feel what I was feeling. And that's when I started at 21 years old. I started using meth. And I was a meth user for 15 years and eventually led to, GHB, and then I became, a huffer. I did inhalants for a long time, crashed 2 cars in 1 month because I was huffing while driving. I had a lot of negative experiences with men. Needless to say, I'm no longer a man hater. I was for a short time, but no longer. But I could go on and on all day long. I mean, my life feels like a movie with all the stuff and crap I went through.
You dealt with the criminal justice system?
Mm-hmm. I was in jail 5 times in Maricopa County, Tent City. I was in Tent City.
So for those who don't know, Maricopa County is down in Phoenix,
That's
and
right.
Tent City is great when it's 80 degrees out, not so great in the summer.
Right. Luckily, I was there in the winter time, but even in the winter in the desert, it's extremely cold. So we had like 7 blankets, and we're still out in the elements. It was really
Sheriff Joe is
eye-opening.
not a very compassionate
No,
man.
not at all. Not at all. Yeah, so that was an eye-opening experience for me.
Was there any benefit out of it for you to be in jail? And the reason I ask that is we've interviewed some other people from Odyssey House who their bottom was being in jail. And so they look at it as an advantage because it allowed them to, okay, I'm getting off this show, this
Yeah,
train,
yeah.
and my life is going to get better. Was that the case for you?
So my times in jail were not drug related.
Okay.
Luckily. So I was in it, the longest I was ever in there was a month and a half. And so, to be honest, that was not my lowest point. My lowest point had to deal with, I almost lost my life and the life of a loved one. And that was my lowest point where I was just like, I gotta change. I gotta do something different. So,
Fantastic. I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
And
thank
how did you get out of it? Did you go to a treatment center, or did you?
I went to Odyssey. I went back to Arizona for New Year's, and I was already living here for a few months, and I went back for New Year's and relapsed really hard and got in a dangerous situation. And I called my mom, and I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
Had she heard that from you before?
No.
So she
Yes.
knew that was those were the magic words.
Yeah. Yep. And so she got on the internet and looked at all the treatment centers, and she said for some reason, she just kept going back to Odyssey House for some reason, and she felt like that would be the best fit for me. We went in and had an assessment, and then a couple weeks later, they called back and said that they could get me funding, and I started, and I went
Wow.
through treatment. Yeah.
And you have no relapses.
None.
That is fantastic.
As an Odyssey House grad, and
Yeah.
now an Odyssey House employee.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So that is a wonderful story. How long were you in Odyssey House?
9 months. And
So that is for those viewers who have not experienced any relative in the addiction community. That's one of the fundamental differences in Odyssey House, in that when you see the ads late at night of the Malibu Treatment Center, which is 30 days.
Wonderful days with your own chef and your own masseuse.
That is not how the real world works, where Odyssey House is the real world, because nothing is perfect.
And we can't tell you. People ask us all the time, how long is your program? And our answer is really, it's how you do in the program. It's how long it takes you to get through. I mean, her doing 9 months is not nearly the longest of anybody in the program, and not the shortest. It could, I guess the average maybe is 4 to 6 months, or 6 to 8 months, or.
Yeah.
You know.
And the reason being is you learn addiction is a lifelong, you practice it for many, many years.
She was a meth addict for 13 years. You don't go into a 30-day program, get a massage every day, and get your meal made for you, and learn how to change your lifestyle and your way of thinking that you've done for 13 years in 30 days of luxury. You can't do it.
That's like a vacation from your addiction.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Vacations all end.
Right.
So during that 9-month program, you had mentioned you'd called your mom, and she was so influential in, first of all, finding
Yeah.
Odyssey House and being drawn back to it. Tell me about how she changed during that 9 month. It must have been amazing to see her, just that weight being taken off her.
Oh, I'm gonna cry. Yeah, it really was. She is so proud of me. She's my best friend and my biggest supporter, and she can't believe the changes that I've made from the time that I moved back here in the end of 2014 till now. She is just so grateful to Odyssey House and how much I've grown, and just how much I'm helping people, and that recovery is my passion. She can't believe it. None of my family can, and they just are so proud. It's just, I've got my family back. I've got a life back. I've got a career that I love, and a career that I'm passionate about. And I couldn't ask for anything more.
Can you ever see yourself doing anything else, or is this, you've met your life's work?
Right now, this is what I can see myself doing. I mean, I would love to eventually go back to school and get a degree. I'd love to stay in this field and eventually become a director. But for now, this is where I need to be.
Okay, you had mentioned that you have 2 jobs at Odyssey.
Yeah.
You've got a full-time and a part-time.
Yes.
Let's talk about both of them.
Sure.
Tell me about the full-time job. When you get to sit next to this
sure.
love.
That's right. We share an office.
We sure do.
You lucky girl.
I know.
Yeah.
I love working with Randall. My outreach specialist job.
You got a raise. That was good. That was good. Just keep going. That's it.
So I get to take clients from one of our 3 adult residential facilities, and I get to take them either to the youth VOA or the men's and women's VOA. And they
Explain what VOA and...
Oh, the Volunteers of America. So it's like
Okay.
a detox center. And I get to take them once a week, and they get to share their story with the clients there. And it's just so inspiring. Like every time I go, they just have these most powering stories, and people are so inspired. They're just wanting to come in right away. Like, how do I get in, and what can I do? And every time it blows me away, and I get to bond with these clients. I get to know more about them. So I really love doing that. And then I get to go to the jail and run the drug offenders group sessions in the
Okay,
jails.
get to go to jail.
Yeah.
Not many people say
Yeah.
that, do they?
So my first time doing that was, it was very, very eye-opening because...
You were intimidated.
Yeah, I think I stopped breathing at one point because the lady that I was shadowing, she had to tell me to breathe twice, so I must have stopped a couple of times, but it was very surreal to be on the other side of the jail system rather than an inmate. So that was my first time in a jail in over 10 years, and this time I'm not an inmate, so it was surreal, and it's definitely different.
Well, it amazes me, and we've had one of our guests was a member of the Odyssey House family who's probably going to end up doing some federal time, but yet she spent 9 months prior to that getting clean. And that to me shows a real commitment to sobriety and getting clean, because many people would think, well, I'll drink and party up until I go to jail and then I'll get clean inside, but jails are not designed to get you clean.
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, I've never been to prison, but I know a lot of prison stories from people who have been in prison, and some prisons it's easier to get drugs in there than it is on the streets. So it's not necessarily the best place to go to be clean.
So when you go out and visit jails, what are some of the messages that you have seen and that communicated to people?
Well, mainly the reason that I go there is to give them resources to when they get out. So these are voluntary groups, so anybody can come. This isn't like an organized, I need this person kind of a group. It's whoever wants to come.
This is our DOGS program,
Right.
which stands for what? I don't know.
Drug offenders group sessions.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes sense. Yeah, I did it.
I should have known that.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's almost like a prelude to the CATS program.
Which is?
I don't know what that stands
Okay.
for.
It's something like Criminal Addiction Treatment Services or something like that. But that
Yes.
stands for CATS.
That would work out
Right.
as well. So it's got to be a situation where you get out of jail, and if you have the addiction gene, first thing you want to do is get a drink or alcohol or something, and by having these resources, these people can call a number and hopefully not get into that pattern.
That's right. That's right. A lot of them want to know, once I come in, they want to know more about what treatment's like, what resources are out there so that they are not homeless when they get out. And that's basically what the group's about. It's mainly about the resources that are available. So
And that has to be just such a empowering job to have.
it really is. I've never had like a happier job, a more meaningful job in my life. And I can actually say it is a career, and I've never had that. It's overwhelming, and I love it. I love every minute.
So Sabrina, your other part-time job
Yeah.
is?
I'm the assistant to the director for sober living.
Okay, and what does that entail?
So,
A lot of crap.
Oh my gosh, so much. I do inspections on our sober living tenants every week. So I go into every single apartment and I check for cleanliness and make sure smoke detectors are working, that they have Narcan and first aid kits and that kind of thing. And I check off a little checklist to, score them on how their cleanliness is.
So why is cleanliness important if I want to kick drugs or alcohol? Why is that important?
Well, it's transitional living. So we are trying to teach them how to transition into real life, into, normal life.
From residential to normal life. And so it's
And that's a
a
big
middle
step.
step. It's a huge step. Because in our residential programs, I mean, there's a daily rundown of how the day is going to go for you and me. And it's like, get up at a certain time, eat breakfast at a certain time. Here's when your next group is going to be. If this is your job in the house, this is what you have to do. And I mean, and to go from that to total freedom all of a sudden can be daunting for
A scary experience.
Well, sure, that's because you've had your life controlled, and it's easy not to. You can't buy drugs at Odyssey House, but when you get out on the street, you can do whatever you want. And so this is our attempt at getting people, transitioning. That's what we call it, trans housing.
And this is super important because, in joking about the 30-day program for $50,000, there isn't that transition, but you need that to go from a totally structured environment to you're on your own. You can make all the mistakes
Right.
you want,
Right.
but yet you're there to try to help these people through that.
That's right. Yep.
So Sabrina, you've met a ton of people.
Yes.
Is there a constant on someone who wants to get help, or is it just all over the map? Because you have a lot of people reaching out, and I know you did in your case. Mm-hmm. Is there any constant, or is it just all over the place?
It's really all over the place. I've seen people come in from other states trying to get help. We have a wait list. We are so full. We have a wait list. It's kind of both, actually. It's constant and it's all over the place. But people leave all the time too, so that bumps people up. So really, that's a really good question. That's hard to answer.
If you talk to our clients and say, why did you decide? I mean, at the group that I went to last night, a couple of the parents asked me, what made me decide to get sober after all those years of being a functional alcoholic? And I described where my mind was. I said my life was okay, although I'd gone through 4 wives, so I must have.
But Randall, you were still getting paid to be an anchor or to be a news reporter.
But there was something I was depressed. I didn't feel good about myself. I was ashamed of what I was hiding, and so that was that was one of the reasons that I decided to get sober. But if you would ask any of our clients, because they talk about that, especially when we go out on these things to VOA detox centers, why they decided, some did because they got busted and they went to jail, or they went to drug court and they were offered no option except to go to treatment. Other people, I was at the point where I wanted to commit suicide, or I talked to several people that were arrested in Operation Rio Grande, and I said, and who are succeeding now. I said, what, they were arrested, which was the impetus to get them into a program, but the reason they decided to stay sober and go through the treatment program is I was just tired of my life the way it was. I was okay living on the street. I was okay being homeless, okay getting a fix every day, but I don't want to do that anymore. I'm tired. I want to do something.
There is an easier, softer way.
Yeah.
And one of the things, Sabrina, is that you probably notice in people is that the problems that you have while you're an addict can all be cured once you stop being an addict.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Something that seems insurmountable, that just, and you have some clarity of thought, you have some follow through, you have the life skills that can eliminate. And I joke in our business, in the broadcast business, if a problem can be cured with money, it's not really a problem.
Yeah, right.
But in addiction, it's just the ability to realize that you've had enough and to make that change. And you've probably seen some amazing stories.
Yeah, I really have.
Can you talk about one, maybe a parent, someone who got their kids back, or something that really causes you to know that you're spending your days in an eminently fulfilling way?
Yeah, I can actually. So there was a girl that came into our parents program, and the reason she got in is because she knew my dad. My dad knew her dad, and my dad actually found her dad dead because he used to work for him, and he didn't show up for work one day, and he went to his house and he was dead. And I've known this guy ever since I was little, but I never met his daughter. And my dad called me one day and told me about her, and that she's going through some addiction issues, and what could I do to help her. So I immediately went down to our admissions and I asked if we could get her in, and they said yes, and we got her in almost immediately. And my dad said to her before she came in, and he just told me this recently, he told her, "Don't let my daughter down." And she completed the program. She was successful. She went all the way through it, and she was able to get her child back that her husband had taken from her, and she's doing really well, and I was just blown away.
I ran into her last night. I'm trying to get her on this podcast. It hasn't worked out because she has a job daytime when we're normally taping.
Isn't that a great way not to be able to come on the show?
Yes. And she looks wonderful, and she's just doing great. She took it when she was in the parents program. She really took charge of the house and was making sure that everybody was doing their chores and duties, and everybody was staying clean, and yeah, she's an amazing woman.
Yeah.
Well, that is wonderful. And on the screen, you'll see the number for Odyssey House. And if you have some questions, if you have a parent, or a child or a loved one.
Or a parent. That's true.
Yep.
And nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. Call this number. Talk to the folks at Odyssey House. Odyssey House is an amazing resource. And having a chance to meet you, Randall, and talk about this has been a lot of fun. But the important thing is talk to someone. Odyssey House will, if
We're one method. We're not the only method. There are treatment centers that work for people and treatment centers that don't. And Odyssey works for some people and doesn't work for other people. Other people will go to, if we're talking nonprofits, something like First Step or House of Hope, for First Step for men, House of Hope for women, EPIC, which is part of Valley Behavioral Health. There's a lot of programs, and they're all a little different. We like to brag that ours is probably the most strict.
Yeah, it is the hardest.
And people, some of the clients that we've taken places say, I went through First Step and it wasn't strict enough for me. I wanted to go to Odyssey because I needed that kind of strictness. And it's,
Sure.
you know, so.
But there are people, the important thing is there are people out there to
Right.
help. And that's why you call a number and talk to people. And our last show last week, we had a chance to talk to a gentleman who does a Al-Anon type meeting on Tuesday nights. Family group that's available over on 21st South. So there's a lot of resources out there. And the most important thing is, if you feel alone, call and talk to someone, because there are some people out there who, you know, like Sabrina, really dedicated, wonderful people who are there to help you succeed. And Sabrina, thanks so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
The message is there is hope.
Yep.
There is hope no matter how far down you think you are, because I mean it varies with people when you talk about their rock bottom, wherever it was. But no matter, you know, whether it's somebody you love, whether it's you, there's hope, because you can change.
Well, it's fantastic.
All three of us know that, right?
We all know it firsthand, and it's a lot better. Not in my case, not to be drinking. You know, I can't speak for Randall, but I know.
Here.
Yeah.
My smile is genuine now, not a hey, you know, that kind of smile. So.
Sabrina, thanks so much. I want to thank our crew. Lee, you do a great job. Bill Francis is here from Comcast Channel 17 watching his first show. And if you're enjoying the content...
He hasn't applauded yet. Come on. There we go. There we go.
Thanks to everyone at Comcast for putting these shows up on Channel 17.
Yes.
We love doing the work, and this is our way of giving back. And so call that number, talk to people. This is a huge problem, but you can get out of it.
Sure.
And there's some great people who have dedicated their life to doing that. Sabrina, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Randall, as usual, I'm
See you
True
next
Mitchell.
week.
We'll do that. Take care. Thanks for watching.